Today, I'm diving into a topic that almost every single person I've ever coached or mentored or guided or sat with, whether in ceremony or in session, has felt at some point, and that is imposter syndrome. What is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is that buzzing feeling that says, that voice in your head that tells you, who do you think you are? You're not ready. They're going to find out that you don't actually know what you're doing, or somebody else could do this better. Right? Or, you just got lucky and you don't actually deserve this. Or sometimes it says, all right, you have something good, but you're about to be exposed, right? All those trickster voices in our head. And it's that feeling that you're somehow faking your own greatness, even though it's very likely and ironic that you've earned everything through your own sweat, devotion, prayer, timing, soul work, persistence. So today, I'm not just talking about what imposter syndrome is. I'm going to talk about what it really is from a spiritual, psychological, somatic, and energetic perspective. And I'm also going to talk about how we break through it in a way that leaves you more anchored, feeling empowered, and feeling more aligned than ever. Because imposter syndrome isn't actually a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is awakening. Let's jump in. Becoming a co-creator with the creator is your birthright. Together, we'll journey into your deepest authenticity. Because the more you align with who you truly are, the more effortlessly you call in the life that you desire and deserve. And most importantly, the more you step into your soul's highest purpose. Welcome to the Manifestation Method podcast, your number one source for Kabbalistic manifestation. Here we combine the ancient wisdom of Kabbalah, modern psychology, and quantum physics to help you achieve real, tangible manifestation results with my proven Abra method. I'm Ayelet Polonsky, and I'm here to guide you on your journey of manifesting a life that is aligned, expansive, and deeply connected to your highest self through the sacred energetic mechanics of Kabbalistic manifestation. To learn how to use Kabbalistic manifestation to transform your life from the inside out, go to ayeletpolonsky.com or download the Manifestation Method app. Let's open the gates of manifestation together. When I was in my 20s, I remember I had this short stint where I worked in the corporate world. But it wasn't your typical corporate job. I worked for a global company. They had a center, an office on, I think, every continent. And the role of the company, what it did was it sent high school students on expeditions to these developing countries all over the world. Places where these high school students could do service work during the day and then do rigorous hiking through mountains, through jungles, through deserts. And the whole intention was to build character. The intention was to crack open their hearts and to ultimately expand their world view and prepare them for the real world before they graduated high school and went off to college. And so on paper, my role was project manager. And in reality, it meant that I got to work from home. I got to fly around the country, visiting different high schools, and I was able to give motivational talks to the students and their parents about these trips and why they should go, and try to get the parents to buy into sending their kids on these big expeditions to developing countries. And also traveling the world was part of my job, which if you know me, you know that's like soul food for me, travel. I also got to stay in 5-star hotels and eat at fancy restaurants on the company credit card. And for a young woman in her 20s, it was a dream. I could be anywhere in the world and do my job. I got a stable paycheck, great commission. I had an impressive title and lots of shiny perks. And with all this being said, somewhere deep down, I knew that this is not what I was meant to be doing. Right? There was this quiet voice, I want to say in my head, but really it was in my soul. And that voice was just like, Ayelet, you're meant for something else. But I kept overriding the voice because the job was just so comfortable and it looked so good on the outside. And then I remember one day before New Year's, my boss called and said, I'm flying in tomorrow to meet you with the head of HR. We need to have a meeting. And at that point, I mean, I was young, I was naive, I never worked in corporate before. I was so unfamiliar with the corporate world that I didn't even know what HR actually meant and what their role was. So of course I got really excited. I genuinely thought I was being promoted. And so I showed up to that meeting with my briefcase in a hand, with like every color pen ready to take notes and mind map and mastermind and all the things. I remember I had a huge smile on my face and I was ready to hear the good news. And so I sat down across from the two of them, and in a conversation that maybe lasted not more than 60 seconds, I was fired. Just like that. I handed over my company laptop and credit card. I walked out of that building and something inside of me just cracked. On the drive home, I had to pull over on the highway, I remember, because I literally could not see the road past my tears. That's how heartbroken I was. And I was just in shock. And so it was in that moment, I wasn't this spiritual teacher or a coach or a podcast host, like nothing. I was a 20-something-year-old girl in her car, sobbing and thinking, what the heck is wrong with me? Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong? And so right away, I called up a good friend of mine and she said something that I'll never forget. She said, Ayelet, you weren't fired because there's something wrong with you. You were fired because you're meant for something much greater. You just don't realize it yet. And her words really landed like a seed. Something got planted. I really let myself feel the feels for the next couple of hours, right? The grief, the shame, the fear, because all of that was real and I wasn't going to bypass it. I couldn't. My tears wouldn't let me, right? But all the while I was in that like big emotional reaction, her sentence kept echoing in the back of my mind, right? If I'm meant for something greater, what is stopping me from stepping into it? And that's when it hit me. It wasn't a lack of talent or a lack of passion or that I didn't have a calling. It was imposter syndrome. And so even though this job looked incredible from the outside, it still wasn't me living in my purpose. It wasn't me living out my soul's curriculum in this lifetime. I just wasn't using my gifts in the way that God actually designed me to use them. But the truth was, I was terrified of putting myself out there. I was terrified of saying out loud and admitting to myself, I'm going to build a business doing what I'm actually here to do, and I'm going to do what I love. I was terrified of the fact that if I actually followed my true calling, there would be no structure built for me to stand on top of. I would have to build it all by myself. And then the voices came, right? Who was I to do that? Who's going to listen to me, right? Was my message really that important? Was I really different from everyone else who was in the self-help, coaching, personal development world, right? What was so special about me? And so all the classic imposter syndrome thoughts rushed in, right? You're not special. You're not qualified. Who do you think you are? You can't do this alone, yada, 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 yada. But at some point, something inside of me got louder than my fear. And I can actually remember the moment when I like land in my body and go back to the memory. It was like this little mini explosion in my heart, right? And so in that moment, I was like, Ayelet, pick up your big girl pants. And I decided to give myself 1 month where I would go into some kind of like self-imposed cocoon, an isolation stage. And so I kind of pulled back from the world. I isolated, mind mapped, I journaled, I did inner excavation work. I studied like what is everything I need to know about building my own business, right? And I asked big questions like what do I really love and what do I really want to do? And so I really started sketching the bones or the blueprint of what my coaching career could actually look like. Hi, Ayelet here. I just wanted to pop in and say I am so excited to officially introduce the Manifestation Method portal, membership, and app. This is your home for all things Kabbalistic manifestation. You'll get access to my monthly live workshops, soul deep hypno activations and attunements, all of our manifestation courses, and our global community of manifestors. And the best part? It's just $26 a month. That's less than a latte a week. Come manifest alongside me and start creating the life you desire and deserve. Head over to ayeletpolonsky.com to join us. And it wasn't that I wasn't afraid. No. I was terrified. But I made a decision. I made the decision that the fear could come with me, but it would not drive. And from that messy, emotional, uncertain month, I birthed, I would say, the first real iteration of my coaching career. And not because I finally felt ready. No, it was sloppy. It was messy. I made many mistakes. I made a fool of myself. All the things. And so I also didn't take this leap because the imposter syndrome magically disappeared. No, I took the leap because for the first time, I chose my calling over what was familiar. I chose my calling over comfort. I chose to play in a bigger pool. Okay. And so that experience and so many other experiences that I could map over the last, 18 years of being in this field, and what I've learned is that what we've been taught that imposter syndrome means you doubt yourself, that you lack confidence, that you're underqualified. But really from a psychological standpoint and from a somatic standpoint, and especially from a Kabbalistic perspective, right? Imposter syndrome is not a problem. In fact, it is a symptom of a growing, a deepening, and an expanding soul, right? So imposter syndrome, that voice that says, who are you to be leveling up? It really shows up at the threshold. It shows up the exact moment where you're expanding beyond who you used to be. And so it is this kind of like liminal in between doorway, I call it, between identities. It is the doorway between two identities, right? The doorway between your old self that says, I don't know who I am in this new space yet. I think I've outgrown who I was, but I haven't yet stabilized and anchored into who I'm becoming. And that's uncomfortable, right? Because humans love familiarity, even if that familiarity is limiting, right? What is that famous line? We will choose an uncomfortable hell over a comfortable heaven. Or a familiar hell, that's what it is. We will always choose, or will most likely choose, a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven, right? Why is that? Because we cling to what's known. We cling to what feels comfortable. And when you start stepping into a new level of visibility, of exposure, of influence, of impact, of leadership, of intimacy, of love or abundance, whatever the thing is, right, that you're stepping and rising into, your nervous system gets activated. That's what's happening on a somatic level, right? Your ego begins to panic. Your subconscious begins to scramble and hold on for what is familiar, right? And so your brain starts to say, danger, danger, unknown territory, tread with caution. And so what happens is like this kind of a identity glitch happens. And that's what imposter syndrome is. It's an identity glitch. It's your identity lagging behind your expansion, right? So what happens is your soul jumps first because your soul knows what you came here to do. And your soul knows the level of expansion that your vessel can contain in this lifetime, right? But your mind needs a little more time to catch up. And that's where the imposter syndrome tries to sabotage, and keep you at this like upper limit stage, right? And let's get spiritual for a moment, okay? Because in Kabbalah, every light has what's called a corresponding klipa. The klipa is a shell, a layer. It's a resistance that surrounds the light. Okay, and before you access a new level of spiritual or creative potency, you meet the gatekeeper. And so imposter syndrome is that gatekeeper. It is the energetic residue, the klipa, the resistance, the layer around your next level. And so it's like the imposter will come in and say, are you actually ready to carry this amount of light? Are you in integrity with who you're becoming? Right? Can your vessel hold this expansion without collapsing? Right? And again, like this imposter syndrome part of all of us really is not a punishing part ever. Right? And it's not ever trying to punish you in a way, but it is trying to refine you. It is trying to strengthen you in a way that allows you to step into your next level with real humility and integrity and alignment, right? Because oftentimes we don't manifest what we want. We manifest according to our unconscious beliefs, right? So sometimes it takes a little bit of time for your unconscious beliefs to, level up and rise to their fullest potential. Right. And so in Kabbalistic manifestation, your vessel must expand before you receive more light. Okay. And so imposter syndrome is the moment that your vessel starts expanding. It starts stretching and your ego screams because it doesn't know what's happening. But rest assured, if you've had this experience, if you're currently experiencing it, your soul is simply elevating. Right? Your ego thinks it's dying. That's it. That's all. No big deal. And let's talk psychology for a moment also, right? Because, there's a reason why your brain freaks out. And because understanding why imposter syndrome shows up can soften the shame around it. And it can also help you really see and believe that there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is simply doing what human brains do. So congratulations. Welcome to the club. You're human. And from a neuroscience perspective, here are a number of things I want to break down that are actually happening when your system starts to freak out and you begin doubting yourself and minimizing your accomplishments or feeling like you don't belong, right? That's one for me that I've experienced for sure, time and time again. Okay. And so from a neuroscience perspective, one thing is imposter syndrome shows up when you're experiencing rapid growth, right? When your external success grows faster than your internal identity has time to catch up, then the brain goes into kind of like an identity whiplash. Right? You're stepping into bigger rooms. You're receiving more visibility. You're doing things that you once only dreamed of. And so your nervous system is like, wait, who is this version of us? Do we really know how to handle this? Are we safe here? Right? Because the brain simply prefers what it prefers, which is, like we said, what is known, even if what is known to you and familiar is no longer serving you. And so when you expand, your brain panics because it feels like you're falling, right? Because literally you're evolving faster than your old image can integrate. And this is so common among, high achieving, deeply spiritual, ambitious individuals. Another thing that happens with imposter syndrome is it shows up when you're in a new environment, right? Because the bottom line is human beings are wired for survival. And unfamiliar environments like, new jobs, new relationships, a new school, new income level, like new position, new communities, new levels of visibility, right? All of these different settings, environments automatically register as potential threats. And so what your brain does is it scans the room and it thinks, uh-oh, new terrain, unknown variables. We must proceed with caution. And so instead of relaxing into the opportunity, your system becomes hypervigilant, right? Your system begins to question, am I doing this right? Do they like me? Am I behaving in a way that's going to maintain connection? Am I qualified? Should I even be here? Do I belong here? Man, oh man, have I thought all of these things at certain times in my life, right? And it's like, it's totally okay. Like, you're human. This is not a sign that you're unworthy. It is a sign that you're somewhere you've never been before, which really ultimately, that's the whole point of growth, right? And another thing that happens is imposter syndrome shows up when you carry perfectionism or impossibly high standards. Okay, so for some people, good enough is a category that literally doesn't exist, right? For some people, it's very black and white, black or white. It's either I'm perfect or I'm failing. There's not really an in between. And so even when things go well, it never feels like enough. You might be getting all the praise and the success and the impact and the feedback. You might be so lovable and people around you might be reflecting back to you how much they love you. And your mind will still say, okay, yeah, sure, but I could have done better. Or your mind might say, that was just luck, or they haven't really seen the real me yet. I shouldn't expose myself too much because if they see who I really am, then forget it. Then I'm going to be abandoned, right? And so perfectionism means you feel like you're consistently one mistake away from being found out. And because the bar is so impossibly high that you set for yourself, you always feel behind, even though you're probably thriving. Okay, so that's one type of like imposter syndrome archetype. Another thing is it shows up when you're doing something really meaningful, something you really care about. And this, I think, is a really big one because when people talk about imposter syndrome, this one's rarely spoken about. So imposter syndrome often appears the strongest when what you're doing matters to your soul, right? Because the more meaningful the work, the more your ego fears losing that thing that you care about so much, right? I've been here. I've totally been here, probably recently even. And the truth is, like, if it didn't matter to you, then you wouldn't be anxious. You wouldn't care. But when something touches your purpose, when it touches your calling, when it touches your gift, then your ego tries to protect you by convincing you not to risk it. So it'll say things like, stay small so nothing can be taken away, or don't shine too brightly because it's dangerous, or don't go all in because what if you fail? And your ego isn't doing this because it hates you, right? It's simply terrified of loss. And so it's really just trying to prevent heartbreak, right? But ironically, it's your deepest purpose that awakens your deepest fear. So all of this is by design, and you're doing great if you've ever experienced something like this. Another thing is it shows up because many of us were actually never modeled what embodied confidence looks like. And this one is really tender. You know, so many of us grew up in homes where our parents, or our primary caretakers rather, doubted themselves, you know, or they hid their power, or they didn't celebrate their wins, or they apologized simply for existing, or they minimized their gifts, or they modeled self-criticism instead of self-trust. I think this is a big one for a lot of people. And so what happens is we internalized a blueprint where confidence almost felt arrogant, right? Where shining felt unsafe, or where being visible felt threatening. And so if you never saw healthy confidence growing up, then of course, stepping into your own confidence feels foreign, right? Of course, you feel like you're pretending. It makes sense. You're literally doing something that does not match the template that you inherited. And again, this isn't failure. It's simply you becoming the first one in your lineage to walk with embodied confidence, right? This is something I've really, you know, I have to say I am blessed. My dad is very confident, you know, and like, but my mom, you know, she's confident in her own feminine, beautiful way, right? But as far as having like a, she's more like modest, I'll say. And so for me, I had to really, like, as a woman, to be someone who is okay being in the spotlight and putting myself out there was something that I had to really cultivate from the inside out. It took work, And so imposter syndrome, when you're met with a model or blueprint where you weren't modeled embodied confidence, then it usually just means that you're carrying old programming into a new life. And the truth is, it's outdated software, right? But your hardware, your soul, your calling, your gifts, they're already upgraded. They know your potential, right? So know how to kind of like discern between your calling and the voices that you've adopted from your upbringing. And to shift gears a little bit here, from a somatic perspective, your body really remembers. Your body remembers because imposter syndrome is not just mental, it's somatic. It's felt in the body. It feels like tightness in the chest. It can feel like shallow breathing. It can feel like a buzzing in your solar plexus, or it can feel like a gripping in the throat, or a shaky voice, or a collapsing posture. And so this is your nervous system saying, I don't yet feel safe being this visible or powerful or successful or capable. And so the real work when it comes to alchemizing imposter syndrome into possibility and empowerment isn't just a mindset game. It's really nervous system capacity. It's embodiment. It's creating safety from the inside out. Okay. And so the truth is, you're not an imposter. You're simply dysregulated, and we need to get your system back to regulation. Okay. And what all of this really ultimately means about you, if you're ready for a little bit of a plot twist, people who generally experience imposter syndrome are high achievers. They are deeply self-aware. They are sensitive. They are conscientious and spiritually aligned. And oftentimes they are emotionally intelligent and connected to their higher mission, right? Whereas, like, if someone doesn't really experience imposter syndrome, I mean, they probably, maybe, possibly lack self-reflection, right? They lack an awareness of their own limitations. They lack humility, maybe, right? And so the fact that you even care about integrity means you're not an imposter, because frauds don't feel like frauds. Conscious people do. All right. So let's, like, again, normalize the expansion. Just start by telling yourself the feeling is a sign of that I'm in new territory. And this is what growth feels like. And you're really just experiencing identity expansion. So allow the feeling to be a good thing, but don't let it take the driver's seat. Don't let it sabotage something that you're meant to do in this lifetime, right? And so, really anchor into evidence, because your mind says you don't belong, but your whole life, your soul, it says you do, okay? And I bet if you gathered enough evidence, you would find proof that your life shows you, or has showed you, that you are meant for something incredible. And so make a list and write out, who have you helped? What have you created? Whether it's a family, whether it's a community, whether you've done some sort of service project, whatever it is, any project, whether it's cooking, whatever, what results have you seen? What wisdom did you earn through your own lived experience? And what kind of feedback have you received from others, right? Because ultimately the truth is, your ego fears, but your soul remembers. Okay. And so again, we said it's like a nervous system creating safety from the inside out endeavor. Okay. And so imposter syndrome really dissolves when your body feels safe. So something that I like to do when I feel that bubbliness start to come up, and maybe I would label it as like fear or anxiety, is I'll just take a hand on my heart, maybe a hand on my belly, and I'll take in a deep breath, and I'll lengthen my exhale, and I'll notice my feet, and I'll allow my body to shake out any like residual that might be living internally. And I will just call my energy back to my center again and again and again. Call my energy back to my center because that is where my power lives, right? So safety first, then clarity, then action. And of course, we have to talk a little bit about manifestation because so much of this is if you can't even imagine you're becoming who you could become, the abundance, the impact, the service, whatever it is, then it's going to be very difficult to step into that future version of you. So embody your future self as though he or she is living that lifestyle, that purpose, that mission now. Okay, so ask yourself, how would the version of me who fully owns this role show up? And then take one tiny action from that person's energy, right? But really first anchor that energy and feel it. What does it feel like to make an impact? What does it feel like to start this project? What does it feel like to marry this person or to love bigger, or to let myself be seen or to join a community or whatever it is? Right? And see that person, feel that person. How do you show up from your center when you're in those spaces, when you're in that identity, right? Because your identity will catch up to the behavior, right? But first anchor it in visually, somatically, energetically on a cellular level, right? And then of course, remove perfectionism, right? Perfectionism is simply the twin sister of imposter syndrome, right? Both will keep you small. And the truth is, your job is not here to be perfect. You weren't here to be perfect. You know, when I first even had the thought of creating this podcast, I was like, okay, what is the bare minimum that I need to get started? I did not research everything involved to have a successful podcast, right? No, I intentionally did not want to know all the steps that I needed to climb in order to have impact in this podcast realm. The first thing I did was I researched a good microphone. Okay, and when I say good, I mean, it wasn't even like the fanciest microphone. I got like a basic microphone and I recorded in front of my computer and I just put it out there. And I started with the minimal viable object, like product, right? Like what bare minimum? Okay, because honestly, your job here is to be aligned, honest, and imperfectly human and in devotion to your mission. That does not look perfect ever. Okay, so it's been a work in progress and the podcast has grown over the years, but I really started with that one little baby first step. Far from perfect, far from it. You know, and really the reframe that I believe changes everything is that imposter syndrome is not a sign that you're unqualified. It's a sign that you're initiated, right? The more light you carry, the more resistance you're going to meet. That's normal. And the bigger your purpose, the louder the ego becomes before you rise. And so you're not an imposter. You're a soul who is growing faster than your old identity can keep up. So be patient with yourself. Your identity will catch up to your expansion. And so let me leave you with this. You're not meant to feel ready. You're meant to feel called. Readiness is a myth. Your calling, that is real. And your soul did not bring you here to play small. And your soul did not bring you here to shrink. And your soul did not bring you here to apologize for your gifts. You're here to serve. You're here to elevate and love and guide and transform. You would not be listening to this podcast if that was not true about you. And that is a fact. And if your mind simply just hasn't caught up to all of what we just shared here, then that's okay. It will. It will. Walk anyways, speak anyways, create anyways, choose anyways, say yes anyways, right? Because the world really does not need a perfect you. It needs a present you. It needs a willing you, a courageous you. And really, that is more than enough. So if this episode resonated with you and met you in a place where you're like, okay, something's moving, then please pay it forward and give this podcast a rating, give it a comment, give it a like, share it with someone you know. It really helps the algorithm spread the love. And God knows the world could use less imposter syndrome, people and more people living in their purpose and living on purpose. And that's ultimately what I'm here to do, is spread that encouragement so that you feel a little bit more empowered to listen to your soul and act accordingly. Thanks so much for being here with me. Here's to your rising. If you enjoyed this episode, let's keep the conversation going inside the Manifestation Method Portal app, your #1 destination for Kabbalistic manifestation. Inside, you'll unlock the secrets of manifestation through my proven Abra method, rooted in Kabbalah, psychology, and quantum physics, designed to help you manifest real, tangible results from the inside out. Join our global community of manifestors, explore our signature courses, monthly live manifestation workshops with me, Ayelet, and access our transformational hypno activations and attunements to rewire limiting beliefs and align with your soul's purpose. The app is available now on the Apple App Store and Google Play. To sign up, head over to ayeletpolonsky.com. Becoming a co-creator with the Creator is your birthright. Let's manifest the life you desire and deserve together.